Hi, Jessica. Thanks for joining us. So just to introduce myself quickly, I'm Hazel. I'm an artist and the youth development worker for Together 2012. Could we start by you introducing yourself briefly and your practice and what mediums you use in your artwork?
So my name's Jess Starns. I'm an artist and a museum professional. I also run the charity Dyspraxic Me, which is a group for young adults who are dyspraxic. And I guess my practice, trying to think how to describe it. I try to be inclusive, and I like being collaborative and creating like participatory projects. So I usually have an idea and then find a medium that's relevant. So an idea, trying to think of an idea that I've had. So like the Education Act project, and so I did a commemorative project looking at the education of Handicapped Children's Act of 1970, and that turned 50 years old in July, and that act meant that all children had a right to an education. So I had that idea, and then I went away to think of a best way to make that idea happen. So I decided with that project that it would be audio. So I always start with the theme, and then I find the practice to go with it.
That's interesting. Yeah, so you do the research first and then find out what medium will work best.
Yes, that's right.
That's a nice way of working. It makes sense. I wondered how you got into the arts, so how it all started. Have you always been interested in this area? Yeah, could you talk a bit about that?
So my granddad used to have a dark room in his loft, and he taught me how to do dark room printing when I was 4 years old. So when I left school, I went to college to study photography, and then went to university to study it further. I do miss the dark room. I now actually own the dark room, but I don't live anywhere where I'm allowed to put a dark room up because I'm renting. So hopefully in the future I'll be able to. I've also worked in youth work and in museums, and in February I just finished my MA in Inclusive Arts Practice at the University of Brighton.
Amazing. It froze a little bit for me just then. I don't know if it did for you, but
okay.
All right. Maybe it's okay for everyone else. Sorry about that. That's amazing that you started using a darkroom at such a young age. That's really cool. What equipment do you need to make a darkroom?
I guess it depends what kind of prints you would like to make. So if you wanted to do normal like black and white printing, you would need an enlarger and trays for the different chemicals, and like blackout like curtains, because you can't have any light coming into the space, but you're allowed a red light, so you would also need space to plug that into, and running water is useful as well to wash off the chemicals after you've developed them. But if you do things like cyanotypes, you can just do that in your kitchen, and then find a light type box to, after you've put the coating of the cyanotype chemicals on top, you can then just put them in the box, light type box, and put them in the cupboard for them to dry in there. It doesn't require such elaborate dark room for that to happen.
Nice. That's really cool that you can kind of do it in a DIY way. So yeah, next I wanted to ask about your more collaborative works. So I was looking at your website and I can see that you do a lot of work on making the arts and heritage sector inclusive for all. So yeah, can you talk a bit about these activist elements, and yeah, maybe we'll come on to your work with the Welcome collection after that too.
Okay, so I really love working in museums. I like working in museums because they tell stories, and I guess that's what I like to do in my creative practice, is to tell people stories that maybe wouldn't kind of be listened to, if that makes sense. So I think museums can be quite welcoming and inclusive places if certain certain things are being put in place. I guess it always depends on the museum and their, I guess, goals of what they want to achieve. I've lost my train of thought, sorry.
No, it was kind of a convoluted question, probably. I really enjoyed some like subtle changes you made in the gallery, like painting it cream instead of bright white, because that can be a bit overwhelming and stuff like that. I thought that was really interesting.
So shall I talk about my MA research?
Yeah, that would be great, yeah.
So for my inclusive arts practice MA, this MA is quite vocational. It's not necessarily, well, we didn't really do that much academic writing. It's more about a project. So you decide a project with a group of people that you would like to work with, and you use something called art of space research to do the project. So instead of having like questionnaires and doing data that way, the data is the artwork that you make with the group, and you analyse everyone's artworks to see what's important and what isn't important, if that makes sense. So I've always been quite interested in, probably in the last decade, in neurodiversity history, and why we label people and where these labels came from, and how we perceive neurodiversity today and how that's changed over years and where it's going. So there's quite a lot of objects at the Wellcome collection to do with neurodiversity history, so I took the group of my participants, my research participants, to the Wellcome when we looked at some objects, and then we had regular meetings where we had a theme each day. So maybe it'd be education or charity or medical, and then we would create artwork together and have discussions about these themes. And then I took that data away and I looked at it for a long period of time. And then I made an exhibition for my end of year show at the University of Brighton with everyone's ideas and thinking about how to make museums inclusive. So for neurodivergent people, so white walls can be quite uncomfortable to be under in the harsh lighting, which was quite hard to do at university, anything with the lighting. But what I was able to do was paint the walls cream, so the walls aren't as bright. Like quite a lot of art galleries do tend to use quite white walls, and then I had lots of different exhibits within the museum, which I can talk through if you want me to.
Yeah, we have time. That's really interesting. It seems like such a massive project. It's so impressive and involving lots of people as well. But yeah, if you have any elements you want to include.
So in the middle of the room, we had a plinth with a polystyrene head on top. And this polystyrene head had been with us without the research, and he signified Percy F, who was the first person to be diagnosed as dyslexic. And people were allowed to write a message to Percy F on the plinth about how they think Percy F might have felt being the first person to be diagnosed as dyslexic. And then if we went around the room, there was a newspaper article written about me, so I about my dyspraxia, but it said something like, at the top of my head, young woman with brain damage writes book, but dyspraxia isn't brain damage. It's a learning difficulty. And then underneath it was cushions with words on that we discussed during the research. So words that we like, words that we think are negative, words as a group we thought were quite debatable, and words that depend on the situation, we would be okay with them being used, so people could sit on these cushions and read the words. And then on the wall we had some cyanotype prints because I wanted to bring my darkroom practice into there. And we made lots of collages during the research, and I made a cyanotype print as a collage of the different topics that we were speaking about during the research, so like the charity, education, medical, and so forth. And then next to that, there was a TV screen with loads of headlines that we used to look through in the research, from newspapers that have been doing articles on neurodiversity. So sometimes they use the word suffering quite a lot. And next to that had a neon sign with the word suffers on. And during the research, the group wanted to explore what an accessible protest would look like. So we had like protest boards that were whiteboards, and people could write their own protest signs for what they saw in the exhibition.
Amazing. That sounds like a really important show. Is there anywhere people can see it online? Do you have some photos or anything?
It's on my website. So that's
Great.
starns.com.
Great, thank you, perfect. So just moving on from that into the present time, I wondered whether COVID has affected the way you work or your work over the last couple of months.
So I think for me, COVID has allowed me to work on my creative practice, because I've been furloughed from my job, so I've had more time to work on my creative practice and to think about it and to plan projects that hopefully I can be doing next year.
Nice, yeah. I guess it gives a bit of space for that, doesn't it? And then, yes, we've got just a short time left, so I wanted to hear about how you found your walk with me. That's what it's called, isn't it? Yeah, your project that you've been doing and that has been part of the festival together. So yeah, how have you found that? Did you were there any surprises on your Google Map walks that you saw, or how did you find visiting these different places and having chats with people?
So over the last couple of weeks, I've so far been on 4 walks with different groups of people who have attended. So the first walk, we went to New Zealand and we did Pilgrimage Trail. The second walk, we went to Newham and we walked around the local area of Newham and went to the Olympic Park. And the third walk, we went to Lynchburg in America and went to the person who led the walk, their old school, because they grew up in the area. And the fourth walk, we went to Chile. So they were quite varied, all
Wow.
different places. I like going on the walks and seeing some really amazing views. So in Chile, we went to the desert and we went to the beach, and there's just completely different views to here in the UK, and also in New Zealand there's some really impressive views.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's like another type of storytelling as well, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, I love that idea so much. I sometimes go on Google Maps as well. I find it can be really nostalgic if you go back to places that are important to you. Have you been using Google? No, sorry, what's it called? Google Street View, not Google Maps. Have you been using that for a while as part of your work or anything? Or is it new?
I use it quite a lot in terms of a tool for me in making things accessible, because I find it difficult to go to new places. So I like to use Google Street View to walk the walk before I go there. And so I know the local area, I know where the crossings are, I know where I might need to go get some food or where all the facilities are in this new place that I haven't been to before. So I use it in terms of access for myself. I also use it with my grandfather, who is from Ireland, and he takes me on walks around the places where he grew up. And we've been doing that a long time.
Yeah, that's so nice. That's a good tip as well, actually, to track the route that you're going to go to. Yeah, it's a really good idea. So we have to wrap this interview up. Went really quickly. Thank you so much for talking about your work with me. It's amazing. You've done so much. And I look forward to watching the walks as well.
Thank you.
No worries. Lovely to speak to you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.